Welcome to SportsBeat KC, the Kansas City Star's daily sports podcast. It's Wednesday, September 23rd, and I'm Blair Kerkhoff. We're talking college sports today. Missouri opens its season on Saturday at home against Alabama, and Souichi Terada, who covers the Tigers, tells us what to expect in Eli Drinkwitz's Mizzou debut. Kellis Robinett then shares what he learned after Kansas State's loss to Arkansas State 2 weeks ago. Turns out the Wildcats were very much at less than full strength in that game, and things don't get much easier for K-State, which visits Oklahoma on Saturday. Finally, Gary Bedore, who covers Kansas, checks in with an update on the Jayhawks game at Baylor on Saturday, and he has a wonderful recollection of Gale Sayers, the former Chicago Bears and KU star running back whose death at age 77 was announced this morning. Before he even attended college, Gary scored an interview with Sayers, and you'll love his story. So let's get going talking college football and sports, starting with Mizzou. Souichi Terada leads off our college football podcast today, talking Missouri Tigers. How are you, Souichi?
I'm good. 3 days away from kickoff, Blair. As the Star sports staff knows, I'm counting down to my haircut, so I'm very much looking forward to that.
We got to find a way to get a mugshot of you in the story that accompanies the podcast, because the haircut is a monumental thing. What a decision that is! Why did you? What's the inspiration behind getting the hair clipped?
Yeah, so at the beginning of the pandemic, my hair was getting long just because I hadn't gotten it cut for a few months to begin with, and then sports shut down. So I was like, you know, what'd be kind of fun? Let's wait to get a haircut until the next live sports game I go to. And that will be the Missouri Tigers versus the number 2 Alabama Crimson Tide on Saturday. So I got to get prepped for it.
Is the beard staying or does that go as well?
No. I'm going to try something new. I'm kind of keeping it a secret, so I can't quite have a beard with the new hairstyle. So, and my girlfriend hates the beard, so it's going goodbye.
Well, I don't know if we'll recognize you after starting next week. So good luck with that, and good luck covering the game on Saturday. That's great that the Tigers are playing, and let's establish that first of all, because earlier today we found out another college football game is off this weekend, Notre Dame's game. And was it Notre Dame Wake Forest? I think we heard that that game's not happening. But Missouri, Alabama, to this, 3 days before kickoff, we're pretty sure it's going to happen, right?
Yeah, it's weird hearing you say Notre Dame, Wake Forest, or whatever ACC game Notre Dame is playing this year. But yes, Missouri actually got some good news on the COVID-19 front. Last week, a very frustrated, kind of a tired Drinkwitz, I guess you could say, was kind of revealed that Mizzou had 12 players in quarantine because of COVID-19 and because of SEC guidelines. And even if you don't test positive because of contact tracing, you are out 2 weeks, so you couldn't play in that Alabama game. So Mizzou was already down 12 players, a dozen players. And then good news, actually, Drink was revealed on yesterday, that it was actually only 7 players. They had essentially an inconclusive test lead to a positive. And after further, swab testing and PCR or whatever acronym we're going with today, those players those players are in quarantine, actually tested negative, and then 5 players were able to come out of it. So some good news. They have another round of testing Wednesday and Friday, so they're not completely out of the clear yet, but they're at the point where no, it's not looking like they're going to cancel. And obviously, you kind of breathe a sigh of relief there for Mizzou, just because it really does sound like Drink was kind of anticipated a few more positive tests last week, and that obviously, with knowing what we know about COVID-19, that can always snowball. So the fact that it actually went down, I think, was kind of a big surprise, but a welcome one for sure.
Yeah. Hey, and so the numbers and the trends are good for Missouri, but also to me, good for Missouri is the transparency with which Eli Drinkwitz approaches the COVID numbers, and I really respect that. He's been really forward with this and open and honest, seemingly to me. I don't imagine a media opportunity passes by without him being asked about it or him addressing it. So, what do you make of the way that he has approached? Here's a guy, is his first Power 5 game approaching as a head coach, and he has to he has to deal with this issue as some other coaches do who are in his situation. But I don't know if a coach that seems to be more honest and open about the situation than he has been.
Yeah, that's a great point, Blair, and I think he should be. Mizzou and Drinkwitz should definitely get their props here. At the beginning of kind of training camp and everything, they were kind of maybe shied away from a bit, and people were kind of like, oh, don't feel great about it, but other programs are kind of doing the same thing. But yeah, I mean, the past few weeks, Mizzou has really dived into the transparency angle, and it's gotten to the point where the media, like we're not even asking Drinkwitz about the COVID-19 numbers, and maybe there would be a few follow-ups, but for the most part, in his opening statement, Drinkwitz will reveal those numbers and kind of give some context behind it. I think that's a great thing. And Drinkwitz made the great point at his weekly news conference yesterday on Tuesday. This is a public health issue. It's not necessarily something about competitive advantage or an injury. And I get the gamesmanship angle. I mean, Drinkwitz is all about it with the whole not naming his starting quarterback ahead of week 1. And he's obviously serious about that. He's taking his own precautions or measures for that. But when it comes to COVID-19 and playing football during a literal pandemic, he's shown and said that this is a serious issue and kind of showcased that. And I think there is maybe some frustrations behind it from not just the media, but the fans and maybe even other programs, and that there is no uniformity. I mean, we don't really know what's going on with Alabama, I guess. They are going through daily testing, which is also a little bit different, but apparently they have no cases, or Saban has been kind of shot away from that himself. And I know at other schools, I believe Oklahoma, Lincoln Riley, I want to say a few weeks ago, he said they weren't releasing it for competitive advantage reasons. So it's, I mean, like you said, Blair, it's definitely a positive thing. And I think, for a first-year head coach, that is a very commendable thing, because you can definitely hide behind don't know what to do. This is my first time here, Power 5, pandemic, all these things. But Drinkwitz and Mizzou has done a really good job about that.
Okay, let's talk about the depth chart. It's out, and as expected, we see the word "or" a lot on the depth chart. And in most years, I would kind of roll my eyes and say that's just typical of that's college football gamesmanship going on. But there's probably a lot of truth to that. The "or" designation. Of course, what I'm talking about is when you list on the 2 deep. There's always 2 players listed for each position on the 2 deep, the first team player and the second team player. And some schools will put an "or" at the end of the first team player to designate they haven't assigned a starting role for the first or second team player yet. So that's you see it in colleges a lot, but given the circumstances and where we are with the pandemic, I imagine there are a lot of places on a field where the coaches just certainly, they have an idea who's going to start, but things can change at a moment's notice. So, but everybody wants some. You always want some definition to your roster and to your depth chart. And at Missouri, it starts with quarterback. The dreaded "or" word is being applied to Sean Robinson or Connor Bazelak. Mm-hmm. So, I think. I've just assumed all along it's going to be Robinson, but is this a situation where it could be a matter of both of them playing against Alabama, or are we going to just see one or the other be the guy?
Yeah, no, that's a great question, Blair. Drinkwitz has actually asked about that on Tuesday, and will you play 2 quarterbacks? He said, or have you put thought into it? And he just said a lot, and then the follow-up question was, can fans expect something like that? And Drinkwitz said, I can't manage your expectations, or something like that. So he just like it's been all training camp, like Drinkwitz has not revealed his hand when it comes to quarterback. I think as of now, all indications or all projections are still on Robinson, but we just don't know until September 26th at 6 p.m. So we'll see how that goes. On the depth chart as a whole, though, Blair, I mean, if you look at it, there are a lot of "ors," but interestingly enough, I think there are a lot of "ors" maybe in the second string kind of part. I mean, there aren't too many positions where there is an "or," especially on the defense. You only see one "or" on the defense. It kind of gets a little bit more questioning, I guess, on the offense. But if you put in a little bit of context, I think you'll feel a little bit better. I mean, for example, like at running back, it's Larry Rountree the third or Tyler Beatty. Like, I don't think there's necessarily like the or designation there doesn't really mean anything because both of those guys are going to play a lot of snaps. And Rountree obviously is an established SEC running back, and he's one of your captains too. So, and then left tackle I guess there are a few question marks, like tight end and left tackle. I don't want to get too into the weeds there, but there are maybe some question marks there besides quarterback. So on the most part, though, I think like offensive line has been kind of decimated with COVID and injuries, but Drinkwitz has kind of said that they're pretty set there in 4 of the 5 positions. So that's kind of a good thing. And at wide receiver, you got a bunch of established guys like Damon Hazleton and Kiki Chisholm and Jalen Knox. And those are 3 very talented wide receivers. So, and like I said, on the defense, you've pretty much got your starters. And you got a big surprise in true freshman Ennis Rakestraw Jr. Getting the nod at cornerback. And I think fans can be really excited about him just because, the media, we've heard a lot about this kid from the Dallas area, and by all indications, it seems like he's worth the hype, and we'll see how he is. And honestly, if he starts, this might have been kind of a symbolic thing. We've seen that happen in different college football programs, so just something to keep an eye on when it comes to the depth chart.
Gotcha. Okay, and just what do you expect from Missouri on Saturday? Eli Drinkwitz's first game, excuse me, as the Tigers head coach, playing an opponent that widely regarded as one of the top 2 or 3 teams in the nation and has been there for a long, long time. Tough assignment for the Tigers, and one that was handed to them in the rescheduling of SEC play. So, what do you think? What do you think will happen? And you saw the last half of last season. You covered the Tigers then, and what are your expectations for a different look for Missouri going from Barry Odom to Eli Drinkwitz?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing is this is going to be a very different offense. I remember over the summer I did kind of a scheme or football offense kind of story on Drinkwitz's offense, and then there are going to be different looks. It's going to be based out of 11 personnel, which is 1 running back and 1 tight end. They're going to do a lot of zone blocking runs, and there's going to be some pro tempo, as Drinkwitz calls it, which to my knowledge or the way I've kind of been explained to it, it's pretty much just turning the tempo up and down, and especially after big plays, they're going to go fast and everything. But yeah, for the most part, we don't really know. Like you said, Blair, like it's so difficult going up against number 2 Alabama in your first game. I mean, if they can keep it within the spread, which is 28 points, which is just crazy, I would be pretty, happy if it's something like a 35-21 game. I think you look at that and you say, you kind of shrug and you kind of like, this isn't necessarily the end of the world, I guess. So, I mean, it is kind of a very difficult thing, but we'll see how it goes 6 p.m. Saturday.
Yeah, crazy things can happen in an opening game, especially this season's opener. We saw what happened to some of the Big 12 schools a couple of weeks ago in their non-conference openers. So you never know. Okay, Souichi, great catching up with you, and we will. Hey, one last thing: fans are in the stands, correct? On Saturday. Yes, fans will be in the stands. It was originally reported Mizzou was planning up to 25%. That number is actually back. That number is actually down to around 11,800. I've been told by an MU spokesperson. So still a significant amount. I think you can still make a lot of noise with that amount of people. I've covered a few games where there were that many fans because of a lightning delay, and it still got pretty loud in there. So something to keep an eye on, something kind of fun. I'm sure fans will still try to tailgate despite it not being allowed. So hopefully there will be some semblance of a game day atmosphere. Yeah, Chiefs fans can tell you, or the Chiefs can tell you that with about 15,000 fans in a 75,000 seat stadium a couple weeks ago against the Houston Texans, they made a significant amount of noise. Players noticed it. So, okay, we're going to take a break, and when we come back, we'll hear from Kellis Robinett, who covers Kansas State, and Gary Bedore, who is on the Kansas beat. So, Souichi, great catching up. We'll talk to you again soon. Appreciate it, Blair. Hey, it's Blair. We have a special subscription offer for SportsBeat KC listeners, unlimited digital access to the Kansas City Star's award-winning sports coverage. Sign up now for 1 year of Sports Pass for access to all the sports news, features, and columns presented on the kansascity.com site, and it's only $30. That's a 40% savings off our regular rate. Your subscription will automatically renew after the initial term at $50 unless you tell us to cancel. Your subscription helps support the sports coverage of kansascity.com and the Kansas City Star, and that support has never been more important. Please visit kansascity.com/SportsBeat KC offer to get this special offer. And as always, thanks for listening. Kellis Robinett covers K-State for the Kansas City Star and Wichita Eagle, and the Wildcats are back in action, scheduled to play the Oklahoma Sooners in Norman, 11 a.m. on Saturday. Kellis, that game is going to happen, right? Tell me that game is going to happen.
I can't tell you with 100% certainty that it's going to happen. Just based off what Chris Kleiman has said multiple times this week, I'd say it's closer to maybe 60-40 that it gets played. They need some good testing results today and Friday to make it happen.
Yeah, well, the testing results, as we know now, there were more players out for the opener for the Wildcats than I guess we knew at the time. Isn't that right?
Yeah, even looking down at the sideline, it looked like maybe the number was about 24. That's what I counted, the people that were on the sidelines not playing. But then Chris Kleiman came out later after the fact and said it was closer to 40. So you kind of do the math. He said they got 12 of those players back, but then lost 10 this week. So I guess right now you're saying they're, not too much different from last week, maybe at 35, something like that. And it'll be, interesting, even if they fulfill the thresholds that the Big 12 put out there to go play the game, which are 53 healthy players, including 1 quarterback, 7 offensive linemen, and 4 defensive tackles. Even if they have all of those things, I think they'll have a patchwork group of defensive backs out there, just given that they lost both their starting safeties last week, and there's a good chance one of the backups isn't going to be available this week either. So throw all that in there, and it just makes a trip that's already hard going down to Norman and playing Oklahoma that much harder.
Right. And didn't we? I think I've got the right program here. Didn't I hear Chris Kleiman say something that they were close to the threshold on one of those positions against Arkansas State? They one more loss at a certain position, and they would not have been qualified to play.
Right.
I could be wrong.
He said that also. Yes, he said that. He said that they were waiting until Friday afternoon to make absolutely sure that they had enough players at one of those positions to move forward and play. I believe that position was the offensive line, because that's one spot where they had some player absences during summer practices. They ended up having 10-plus offensive linemen active for that game, though, so they must have gotten some really good news late in the week that allowed them to play. This week, he said it's a different position, so I guess that would maybe mean that it's defensive line that they're inching close to, that's at least a spot of concern. So it's just all interesting. I mean, this isn't a Kansas State problem. It's not an Oklahoma problem. It's kind of just a college football problem. I think I read a stat earlier today that said 1 out of every 5 college football games have been postponed already this season. We saw it last week with Baylor and Houston. TCU has had a game postponed. Oklahoma State has had a game postponed. So if it happens, it certainly isn't the end of the world. Kansas State and Oklahoma actually share 2 bye weeks later in the season. So if you're going to miss a game, this actually would be a decent one to miss because you could just slide it back. But all that being said, I don't want to be totally doom and gloom. If the game were to be played tomorrow, they would play it.
Okay. Well, and as we also discovered later, Skylar Thompson got injured against Arkansas State in the first half and ended up gutting out his performance in that loss, but ended up not practicing the following week. Take us through the Skylar Thompson news.
Yeah, so it kind of explains a little bit about why he was off in that game. Even though he put up pretty good numbers, threw for about 250 yards, had a good completion percentage, everybody just could tell after he took an awkward hit at the goal line in the first half, he wasn't moving around quite as much. They didn't ask him to do anything in the QB run game. He missed a few potential game-changing deep balls to Sebastian Taylor, Malik Knowles, some other guys that if he's on the money, those are game-changing plays. They probably win. But lo and behold, I guess there's a pretty good reason for that. He was turns out he was playing through some aches and pains, wasn't able to really do much of anything other than go to therapy last week and get rehab. So he was out all last week. I thought something was up when Kansas State put out a video, and the only two quarterbacks they had throwing were Nick Ost and Will Howard, the backups. Normally, Skylar Thompson is very much featured in those things. So the good news is he is back at practice. As at this moment, he's on track to play this week. So hopefully he's back at full strength. But it just goes to show that hit that he took in the first half of that game was more, I guess, significant than maybe originally believed.
Right. So in that game, of course, the Wildcats lost and upset by Arkansas State. Arkansas State played very well to win that game. But there were a couple of, I thought, newcomer standouts for K-State. Maybe that's too strong a word, but at least guys that had not played in a K-State uniform showed up pretty good. One of them was the freshman running back, Deuce Vaughn. What was impressive about him?
Well, really everything. I pegged him as soon as he signed with Kansas State. I thought he was going to be a good player. I just didn't necessarily know it would be week one right out the gate as a true freshman. But he did, shoot everything well. He led him in rushing. He scored a touchdown. He looked good as a receiver on one play. Chris Kleiman, after the fact, went out and said he thought he was Kansas State's best player in the entire game. So the funny thing is I say all that, he showed a lot of great speed, shiftiness out there. I think they can find a lot of creative ways to use him in the future. But it's funny that I say all that it was actually after the game that is what impressed me more about him, just listening to him talk. He was asked a question about Arkansas State's run defense, and he didn't, just give us a bunch of cliches about it. He was breaking it down like Tony Romo in the CBS booth, telling us where the safety was, which defensive linemen were stunting and all this stuff. He broke it down better than I've really heard a active player do that in a super long time. So for a true freshman to do that just shows his maturity level. And I guess we shouldn't be surprised. His dad is a former player, former coach. He works as a scout with the Dallas Cowboys. So he's been prepared for this moment. You do kind of worry. He's a small guy, only about 5'5", so you do worry about him handling a big load as a true freshman, but he certainly surpassed the expectations in that first game, and certainly a bright spot in the loss.
Right. And then the other newcomer I was thinking about was the transfer tight end, Briley Moore, who had a good game, led him, I think, with 6 catches. It was good to see him produce. So what a tough opening assignment for the Big 12 schedule. First of all, another road opener in conference play for Kansas State. I believe this is consecutive year number 3,912 that the Wildcats have opened conference play on the road. And of course, it's against the however many time conference champion, consecutive conference champion Oklahoma is. And even though the Sooners are starting over at quarterback, it just seems to be right off the assembly line with Spencer Rattler, who followed Jalen Hurts, who followed Murray, who followed Mayfield. It's just unbelievable how Lincoln Riley has developed first Stoops and now Lincoln Riley developed quarterback. So I would say that the Wildcats have their work cut out for them on Saturday.
Oklahoma's come a long way since the days of Landry Jones and Blake Bell, haven't they?
That's right. Hey, now Blake Bell got a championship ring last year with the Chiefs. Caught a touchdown pass in the playoffs. But you're right. But you're right. That was those years were tough ones.
Well, the crazy thing is, those were both pretty good quarterbacks. Landry Jones went on to be a backup in the NFL for a few years. And Blake Bell, even though he didn't make it to the league as a quarterback, you can see he had all the athleticism in the world to play, that he's making it now as a tight end. So, it just goes to show you how tremendous Lincoln Riley has been at that spot. To just one year after the other produce Heisman winner, Heisman finalist. And now Spencer Rattler actually looks like he has as good an arm as any of these guys. So a very tough task for Kansas State, especially just given that last week they struggled to defend Oklahoma State's best receiver. It's going to be infinitely harder in this one.
Yeah, look, and I'm somewhat making fun of Oklahoma quarterbacks before this group, but before this group, you only had Heisman Trophy winners like Sam Bradford and Jason White, and then runner-up Josh Heupel. It's just been an unbelievable run at quarterback for Oklahoma since basically in this century when Bob Stoops arrived in it was 98, 99. So it's unbelievable how I think when you define the success of Oklahoma over the past 2 decades, it starts at that position. They've always had, seemingly, always have had a terrific quarterback, and it seems like this year is no exception. Okay, well, Kellis, I know you're heading down there, so safe travels and good luck. And we're going to take a break. When we come back, you will hear from Gary Bedore, who covers the Kansas Jayhawks. Got Gary Bedore here. He covers the Jayhawks for the Star. Gary, how you doing today?
Good, Blair. How you doing?
I'm doing okay. I'm doing all right. Well, Kansas football back in action on Saturday, at least scheduled to be back in action. I know earlier in the week, the last time we heard from football coach Les Miles, there was no certainty. I don't think there's any certainty to any college football game this year in the pandemic season. But what was the latest that Les Miles and KU had to say about Saturday's game against Baylor?
Yeah, Les Miles stressed that Kansas hasn't had many COVID cases. They don't release their numbers regularly. He'll say they're looking good. He did say last week they had two, but he wasn't specific if they were cropped up last week or the week before. But anyway, as far as Baylor, all Miles said was he was confident that as a Big 12 partner, they would be forthcoming, and everybody was confident there'd be a game. And he said communication was key, and they just want to be updated. But the word out of Baylor Monday at the teleconference of the Big 12 was their new coach was confident the game would be played. So as of now, there will be a game.
And they haven't had one yet, right? That's at least KU. They were upset by Coastal Carolina, but at least they played a game. Baylor's had two games scratched from the schedule because of the pandemic. And
and last week's game against Houston, the AD was saying how he just was crushed for the players because that's tough 2 weeks in a row thinking you've got a game. And the excitement under a new coach and all that, and then have it be wiped out. Last week's game wasn't canceled until Friday, so that's quite a shock.
Absolutely, that was to get that news a day before the game, a game that had already been rescheduled. That what a kind of kick in the gut that had to be for both teams, for both Houston and Baylor. So the game is at Waco. And is it? I'm sorry, 6:30 kick. I'm trying to find it real quick. Okay, and we'll see if that happens. And of course, like I said, Kansas played a sloppy game and a real disappointing loss to Coastal Carolina in the opener. We'll see what happens in Game 2, assuming there is a Game 2. Yeah. But Gary, big news today broke this morning that Gale Sayers, the Kansas Comet, had passed away at age 77, and it occurred to me that you're a pretty good source to talk about this because you grew up in Chicagoland and have been in Lawrence sort of ever since college, and so the two of the places where Gale Sayers made the biggest impact in his life were those places. And so when you were growing up in Illinois, how big was Gale Sayers? I know you weren't. We're not talking about. I'm trying to think of you and I are about the same age, and I remember sort of the tail end of Gale Sayers' playing career. I certainly wasn't around when I see the highlights of him, stepping aside people and jumping over. He was phenomenal, but I don't remember seeing that live. I just remember what your memories of him were when you were growing up in the Chicagoland.
Yeah, I remember watching that game where he scored 7 touchdowns against the Niners on
Wow.
TV. And uh, I think I was watching it alone as a kid because I just remember being stunned. And my dad took me to a game, and I saw him play in person, I believe. And I think they played Johnny Unitas and the Colts, and it was really cold in Wrigley Field. And
Wow.
my uncle was a policeman, and he carried Gale Sayers off the field with another policeman when he had his first or second knee injury in an iconic photo. Because back then, knee injuries were way worse than today. And, Sayers only played, 7 seasons because of a couple knee surgeries. He
Right.
came back from the
Surgeries that would be that you'd
yeah,
fix today and you'd be out of
yeah.
season, but not then.
No, and I think he came back from the first one, and it was a really big deal. And I think he gained 1,000 yards that year, which back then was a big deal, the 1,000 mark. And but he was huge. And my epic tale is that when I was in high school, I knew I was going to go to KU. So our journalism class teacher made us interview a quote famous person. So I called KU. Gale Sayers was associate AD. Set up an interview for spring break. Drove down from Chicago with my friends. Mostly to interview Gale Sayers, but partly it was a good excuse to get in the car and drive with friends to a
road
college.
trip, right?
So I get to KU, and I had an interview scheduled with him for like 10 a.m. I go up to the office as a high school kid. They let me in, and I was scared to death because A, I'd never interviewed anybody. B, Gale Sayers,
Right. It was
Chicago
Gale
and Hall of
Sayers.
Famer. So I go in there, and I had written out 10 questions because, again, I didn't know how the business worked or anything. So he was real friendly, and I asked him the first question, and he talked for about 3 minutes and answered about 8 of my questions in one. And I remember sitting there as he was doing it, thinking, "Oh my God, he's taken on my list." So I think I improvised a little bit, but really he had me pretty good. So I think it was a really
That's
short
great.
interview, and I was scared. But I wrote this story off it, and my teacher didn't believe me that I drove to Lawrence to interview Sayers. So they called the KU athletic department, and Sayers told her that I did come in and interview. So I got an A, and I was kind of the hero of the class because everybody else was interviewing their neighbor, the fireman, and mine was on Gale Sayers.
Heck yeah, you were the hero of the class. That's phenomenal, Gary, that you got to do that. I didn't know that story. I love that you told that. Well done. Well done. Well, he look. I always equated him with athletes whose careers ended prematurely because of injuries that wouldn't end careers today. And I always think of him and Sandy Koufax together. They played about the same time in different sports, but were just unbelievable, at what they did. And if they had played 40 years later, 30 years later, whenever, however we define modern medicine, they would have been able to continue their careers, but they just couldn't because of what medicine was at the time and what
Yep.
surgery was at the time. So anyway, well, that's great,
Yeah.
Gary. Well, we will let's end it on that, and we will talk to you again next week, and maybe have a result from a
Yeah.
football game that the Jayhawks are scheduled to play on Saturday. They won't be favored. I don't because of the outcome in the first game. I don't think they'll be favored in any game remaining this year. We'll see. But anyway,
Yeah.
Gary, great catching up with you, and we'll talk to you again soon.
All right. Thanks, Blair. See you.
That'll do it for today. Thanks to our production staff of Derek Donovan, Randy Mason, Beth Welsh, Jeff Rosen, Chris Fickett, and Savannah Smith. Tip of the cap to Souichi Terada, Kellis Robinett, and Gary Bedore for talking college football with us this week. You can find stories that they have written in the show notes and on kansascity.com. Earlier in the episode, you heard me talk about the Sports Pass offer. It still stands. It's still a good one, $30 for a year's worth of sports coverage, and that includes Sports Extra that comes with the e-edition. There's more than 50 additional pages of national sports coverage today. Here's an even better offer. Buy the entire Kansas City Star product. Sports, news, features, commentary, and analysis, the whole thing. You get all the stories written by my talented colleagues, plus additional news, sports, and business coverage with the e-edition. The details at account.kansascity.com/subscribe. That's account.kansascity.com/subscribe. And whether it's the Sports Pass or the full subscription, you're getting and supporting the best sports and news coverage in Kansas City and helping us produce programs like SportsBeat KC. Thanks for listening, and we'll be back on Thursday with another episode.